This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by MagnaGrip, America's choice for clean air. Eliminate 100% of airborne toxins from within the station with MagnaGrip. Learn more at magnagrip.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. I am your host, Aaron Zamzow. I am a writer here for Fire Rescue One. I'm a fire officer, and I am your host, like it or not, and I've had fun doing this over 130 times, but I haven't done it alone. I have the person that's really helped me sound intelligent and write intelligently for over 10 years. I call her the commander, Janelle Pasquette. Janelle, how are you today? Welcome.
Thanks. I'm doing great. Looking forward to this show. We've been trying to get this guest on for a while.
The one and only Preet Bassi is here, who is she's bringing, at least from my standpoint, she's bringing the IQ of the show up quite a bit. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about CPSE, which she is heavily involved with. As a matter of fact, she's the CEO for the Center for Public Safety Excellence. And prior to that, she was the Director of Finance and Administration for the International Accreditation Service and managed their fire and life safety program, and along with the other litany of boards that she's on. Without further ado, by the way, Preet, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you both.
There are so many things that are developing within the fire service. AI, we've mentioned, and just people really focusing on innovation. But before innovation, we kind of got to start with just a general accreditation. And that's kind of what you've been driving with CPSE. And for the person that is going, what is this? What do they mean by accreditation? Can you give me, let's start with that. Let's start with, first of all, how did you get involved in the fire service? And then dig into what CPSE is and why everybody really needs to know about it.
So the questions actually are kind of tied together of how I got involved with CPSE and became a part of some of the efforts that are going on within the fire service, as well as CPSE's own journey. I pretty traditional undergraduate degree, political science and economics, and I went and I got my master's in public administration. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go fix the education system in the state of California. And I worked at the California State Assembly. And about 2 minutes into politics, I realized that I wasn't really going to be able to fix much of anything. So I pivoted to local government, and that was just so much more responsive, so much closer to the individuals that were receiving the service. And it was much more nimbler. Like local government could change much quicker than state, and definitely more than federal government could change. I had the opportunity to work with the city of Anaheim. We were really interested in improving as a city. I actually got to work on our building department accreditation, which brought me over to being a volunteer for the International Code Council in their international accreditation service, and then becoming a staff member. We had done some work with CPSE. We had the building side, they had the fire side. We'd work together on a fire prevention department accreditation. And in my time at ICC, I kind of moved up the ranks, got to experience more of the nonprofit leadership and management work. And I was 33 at the time, living in Southern California. My husband and I we were both working in and around government, but that's not the business of Southern California. That's the business of DC. So threw my name in the hat, said, let's see what makes. I've since learned that there were 75 other folks that applied, and my board at the time was either crazy enough, brave enough, or visionary enough to say that they wanted to select me. And it'll be 11 years in September that I've been.
You're the CEO, 11 years.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow. So you packed up the van, drove across country. Now you're in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And sometimes you're in Washington, D.C. You have like a room full of luggage that's always on the go, correct? And
I joke like the Atlanta airport or a Delta lounge are likely where you'll find me the most, right?
Okay.
Yeah, connecting through. But, part of that journey for CPSE also is about wanting to make sure that the fire service is super dialed into their local community. If you've seen one fire department, you've seen one fire department. They're not all identical. The ways in which the geographic community, the individuals within the community, the political structures of the community kind of produce a fire department that's a best fit for that community is something that really needs to be understood. And over time, there's practices that could be prevailing, everybody does them, leading, some are doing them, emerging, very few are doing them and they're coming around. Well, over time, what's prevailing becomes old school, what's leading becomes prevailing, emerging becomes leading, and a whole new set of emerging comes together. If a fire department doesn't have a way to track or benchmark what they're doing against these set of practices, they might find themselves being super emerging one day, but then becoming leading, prevailing, and unfortunately, maybe even over time becoming old school.
Mhm.
And the complexity of the accreditation process is not just about response, it's training, it's hiring, it's facilities, it's even water, communications, data, PIO. Obviously, the health and safety of the firefighters is really important. We've just added a new wellness category. So that's the accreditation process in a nutshell is a model for a department to analyze what they're doing well, figure out where they need to improve, and then having somebody who's going to check up on them to get it done. Because unfortunately, we often do what is inspected and not what is expected of us.
Yeah. Oof. I'm going to steal that one at some point.
You're welcome to.
Because, but I know exactly what you're saying. You might be hired by a fire department, and then after 10, 15 years, when you get hired, you're like, wow, we're kind of in the forefront of a lot of stuff. But if you don't stay true to what got you there, you can all of a sudden be behind, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. But the fire service has changed dramatically, and with data and now with innovation and AI, which we'll dig into. CPSE is actually they're a nonprofit
We are
corporation,
a
correct?
not-for-profit. All of our services are fee for service. So if a department raises their hand and wants to go through the accreditation process, there's some preliminary steps for them to work on once they've got their documents in a little bit of a better state. They raise their hand that they're ready for a site visit. We come on site and do the site visit, but they must also go through it every 5 years. And I think that's really where, rather than a one and done, that ongoing revisit, and they have to submit an annual report that hopefully holds their feet to the fire. And we update our accreditation model also every 5 years. The 11th edition is out on the street. It's not going to go into effect until 2027, and it is a significant departure in four main areas. EMS transport, we're seeing a lot more departments taking on more of that, and more really like the pre-hospital care part of it that they need to be involved in. Definitely wellness. We'd always had health and safety sections. We really leaned into wellness a lot more. Public information, but going more than just, hey, we have a fire, this is what happened, this is the building, the structure burned, there was no fatalities. It's that more proactive community engagement that we're asking departments to start thinking about. And so those are the three big shifts that we made between the 10th edition and then the 11th edition.
Okay. And why do departments, and you also accredit individuals, correct? So so I'm not a chief, but I want to be accredited as an officer. You have a track for that, correct?
So we have our fire department accreditation process, and that's about 29 years old now. Our professional credentialing process is about 24 years old. And it was some smart people in a room that said, well, if we have this continuous improvement mindset for departments, what if we also had it for individuals? We started first with the chief fire officer designation. We've since added the fire officer. We actually have 5 additional ones. Public information officer, fire marshal, chief training officer, chief EMS officer, and a brand new one, the fire and emergency service analyst. And all of them have the same components. We're asking about your education, we're asking about your professional contributions, your community contributions, but the technical competencies, those are specific to the job. So the professional the technical competencies that you would expect showing up for the chief fire officer, they're mostly based on what was 1021. I can never remember what the new number is going to be with the restructure, but we went 3 above those requirements based on what we felt was really important for the officers of today and for tomorrow to be aware of. We added data and technology, we added mental and behavioral health, and what we're now calling community and workplace inclusion and belonging. Those historically have not been in NFPA standards. It might take a while, perhaps our collective careers to get in, but we felt that if a chief fire officer, pretty much anybody in a fire department didn't have their finger on those three technical competencies, they'd be missing out. So, Aaron, if you are interested,
well, I'm throwing my name right out there. So we're going to have, I've done it with my master's, and now I'm going to do it with this. So hold me accountable to it, and I'll go through the process. And then what we'll do is we'll have you back, and we can talk about like the bones of it. And I'm excited to do it. I've had a couple people, more than a couple. I've had numerous people say, you need to do it. I go through the process, and so I'm excited to do it. So people can kind of track my journey, and hopefully I can be a catalyst for some others to join me along. So, so the individual part you have, and then you have it for the department also. And not that I'm trying to I'm not shying away from it. I will go through the accreditation, and and so when I see you at conferences, you're going to go, where are we at with this? And so
I'll carry around one of the ribbons that you could put on yours. So as soon as you have it, I'll be able to hand you one of those ribbons, and it'll have FO across the bottom. How about that?
All right. That's good. That does motivate me for some reason, some odd reason. I love challenging myself on these, and Janelle's over there just laughing, going, okay, well, we'll see how long it takes him, but he's going to follow through with this. So accreditation, and I think like personally, it helps you get it helps you get everything, kind of all your ducks in a row, and also kind of see like where your weaknesses are, right? Like, where do I need more attention? Where do I need to put some effort to become more well-rounded and balanced as an officer, right?
Yep.
Based on those credentials.
I had the opportunity to be on a panel with a few folks. The moderator was somebody who'd recently just gone through the credentialing process, and the other two were also, and they all pointed out, one, they were able to recognize something that they had done that was pretty amazing. And because there's a peer review process, they had a peer who said, wow, like you did this thing that's really cool. Because sometimes you're in your own place or in your own department, you just keep going, you think it's great. But when you receive that external validation, it does make a difference. And especially from somebody who understands the space that you're working in, it helps so much. So they appreciated that. They too appreciated this network that they developed, because when we assign a peer reviewer, it's not somebody from your state, specifically not from your state. So it's now expanding. And your application review might take a period of time. You end up taking more than half the time talking about and brainstorming and sharing ideas about how you want to solve an issue in your department and how they may want to do. But they did talk about specific areas that they needed to grow. And we're asking you to develop amongst those components that are in there, talked about education, professional contributions, community contributions, and technical competencies. There's also designee goals. So someone's like, I'm not great at this. I had enough to kind of write a little bit, maybe half a paragraph on it, but I would really like to expand my knowledge in dispatch or EMS or training.
Or mental health in this case too, right? You just added that, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. So not only is it what training can I take in that area, but what experience? Can I raise my hand to be on a committee? Can I raise my hand to help revise the policies within our department? And part of that intentionality of like writing down, like, this is the thing that I want to do. And 3 years later, we check if you've done it. Overwhelmingly, folks have completed it, because just that simple act of writing it down. And whether it's our accreditation model or our credentialing model, it's really looking at the whole department or the whole individual. It's not allowing you to be imbalanced, that you're, oh, well, I'm certificate heavy, but experience light, or I'm on every single committee, but it's been a while since I've been in the classroom. It's really trying to step by step grow in each of those areas so you can keep pace. And so much of the professional contributions and recognitions is, are you at those places and on those committees where you're hearing all the new things that are happening in the fire service?
Yeah. Well, it's like a coach, right? Coaching is big, right? Like, you here, folks, this is your coach for the fire service, and for both. If you're a department, this is a way to help. I think probably, I mentioned the word catalyst, be a catalyst for some change, because, hey, this is someone from the outside looking in, and of course, right, like every department, we always, hey, this is how we need to improve everybody. But do we really, or is that just what we're focusing on? It's always great to have someone from the outside come in, right? And that's kind of the whole goal for the department uh, certification, correct? And what are some other reasons why departments may want to get accredited?
Well, your point about the catalyst for advancement of the fire and emergency to create safe and resilient communities, that's actually our vision statement. So I'm happy that inherently you were picking up on that. Reasons that fire departments, I'll think through the 50 departments that were sat before the commission at our conference this past month. 13 of them were first timers. 37 were going through for multiple reaccreditations, up to including, I think, even the 5th time that they were getting reaccredited. The reasons that they said, it helped them analyze the emerging risks in their community and determine whether they had a gap in how they were either going to mitigate or respond to those risks. One of them talked about a brand new warehouse that was coming in, one of those mega warehouses with like the automated systems, and really just because we also asked them not just to look at what they have, but what's on deck to be built, that they were able to begin to understand what that was, do some pre-planning to really understand how they might begin to respond to, because they felt the mitigation was adequate. Like there's a lot of automatic systems that are in the building, but at some point you still might need to go into it. And there's commentary, right? Like that's great that we're going to have these automatic sprinklers that are going to put out this fire. Well, now all of a sudden our firefighter is going to be damaged by hot steam rather than hot flames. And how do the protective gear that we have, how does it stand up to steam? Because you open that door and that's what bursts out. Like I know if I'm cooking and sometimes like the steam hits me, but that's nothing in comparison to what it could be. So that's one.
Yeah. And also you have off-gassing, different chemicals now, right? Like, we definitely don't want to, within a 10 foot, 12 foot, whatever it might be, right, to create your warm and your cold and your hot zones in a particular situation. Like it helps, all that pre-planning helps you to deal with obviously just in case, but it's forcing you to do this now, right? Like the accreditation saying, hey, have you done this? Let's do this.
Another big one is community engagement. And unfortunately, like we're definitely seeing some incivility showing up, right? Like whether it's federal government, state government, local government, and you see it play out, right? Like there's a lot of council meetings that have just got kind of gnarly and unnecessarily negative. To try to get ahead of that, we ask the fire departments during their strategic planning to reach out to their community. We ask them when they are looking at what their risk is, they're looking at how they can respond to it today, but they're trying to determine if there's a gap, also to go to the community to see if there is a willingness to accept that risk or if they could get some additional resources. So that proactive community engagement in a time when it's not necessarily the most fun to be trying to engage with the community is something that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy how intentional the model is about it brings in other departments. You have to bring in finance department, you have to bring in the HR department, you have to bring in whether it's dispatch, and it sets some expectations on those internal services that sometimes fire departments have some challenges. They know they'd like something more, but it's like, well, I'm the fire department, I'm the fire chief, I'm not the finance director. Like, how much sway can I have? Well, our accreditation model kind of pushes some action in those areas, like we've seen it. And the best was multiple occasions throughout the hearings, you had fire chief, many members of their department, but you also had a representative from the authority having jurisdiction. So whether it was like the deputy city manager, the mayor, and the local president. And you saw this combined effort to really understand what was in the best interest of the community and the firefighters. And there was not a, well, we'll get one, but not the other, but they really were, how do we bring it all together? And there was, it warmed our heart collectively just to see how much these departments could point to improvements that had occurred in their communities, within their firefighters, the improved morale, the better planning tools that they had, the better common communication tools that they had. That was really great.
Yeah, it forces the department to evaluate where they are and then start to create a plan, which I think sometimes when you don't have that, that builds camaraderie. Like it tells the field, hey, we're looking forward and we're trying to evaluate where we are. And with that too, like also do. And before I forget, though, I think we needed to give a shout out to one of our friends of the show, Chief Waldo from Bozeman. I believe they just got
They
accredited.
did.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very well. Bozeman was. They received their first time accreditation. We were really excited. He was in a time slot also with the Metro. So he's the IFC president. He was also in the same time slot as the Metro president. And we saw the room attendance for that particular hearing, I think, double or triple, to the point that we'd set it for 300. And we also had many, many people standing in the back. So folks wanted to see, but they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
And they really were they went about it the right way. I think they didn't try to rush to the finish line. They took the time to understand how the model could benefit them and how, as a community that's growing so very quickly. And
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
it has a very young department and it's a very young city that they could build systems and structures from the beginning that would serve them for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to do it. I just had some great conversations with him. I actually called him after I found out, and but it was really great to hear how excited they were. And so hats off to you, Chief Waldo. Nice job with it. And with that, what I was going to ask also, like my last question, kind of on the accreditation, is you also do a standards of cover for fire departments who are trying to maybe add additional apparatus or med units or staffing. Correct? Like that's another huge aspect.
So that's actually that is the core portion of the accreditation model, and we joke it's like people and stuff. So
Okay.
by looking at what you have in your community, when you look at what is here's the community, here are the people, what is the likelihood, the impact, and the frequency of if some incident does occur, what would be the optimal way to respond to it? There's lots of NFPA standards, and there's going to be a gap. So you've got a couple of decisions. Is there stuff that we can do to mitigate this? Can we push for fire sprinklers? Can we push for CPR AED, CPR training, AED deployment that will allow us to bring down the risk? Or do we need those additional people or stuff, right? So, and whatever said people and stuff is, that would come into play. And I think sometimes the lack of people and stuff has caused some of our fire departments to become quite innovative in looking at how they can mitigate or reduce the risk through partnerships, through, whether it's mobile integrated health, because the EMS calls, and especially with the frequent flyers, those can be demoralizing, right? And we don't want our firefighters to experience burnout. Well, if there was a way for those calls to somehow disappear through some improved education or some diversion to another service, the firefighters are at their best. And I don't love when people talk about, we only have 5% of our calls are fires. I think, frankly, that's kind of a dumb statistic, because what you've not accounted for is the specific skill sets that are needed on a fire, as compared the multiple specific skill sets that are needed on a fire compared to perhaps a simple EMS call. The need to be ready for that call, whether it's training, but also the equipment checks, the apparatus checks. And unfortunately, because those might be calls that they go on less, but they're so high risk, the need to train and to just run those calls ahead of time to make sure that it doesn't become a bad incident. So I'm not a big fan of fires, only 5% of our calls. That's one way of looking at the statistic, but not all.
Well, we still have to be ready for that, right? Like, it's I like to say like a fire is like a Super Bowl for a fire, for a
Yeah.
firefighter. You plan, you prep, you prepare, you practice, or like an Olympic, 100-meter race, you train for hours and hours and hours for that, 4 or 5 minute event. I guess if I'm running 100, it's 4 or 5 minutes. I'm pretty slow, but you get the point, right? We still have to be ready for that. And, we also have to be ready for that EMS call, and you had said that, there's a lot of frequent flyers, and there's a lot of creativity going into how we staff that. I think this is a great way to transition into AI, right? So AI is being used a lot to help departments with that. And that was one of the things you just recently had the CPSE Excellence Conference. So tell us a little bit about that conference, and then move into how AI was really one of the pivotal uh, conversations there.
Yep. So we have our annual conference always in Florida, always in the spring. Um, we had about 1,100 bodies walking through the space. That's a mix of first time attendees, returning attendees, speakers. I think we had something like I had over 100 sessions. Like one day we had 7 tracks. I was slightly mad at my team. I'm like, I can't decide where to go. I
It's a good problem to have, but yeah, right.
right? And we did do some training on if you want to get your department accredited or you're already accredited, you want to do it. We did some actual unstructured sessions, and these were with the community of credentialed designees. So we had an unstructured room for the FOs. We had an unstructured room for the FM. We had a moderator in there that would get them going, but they joked it's like they almost felt like we had them set up in like an AA like type, like they were sat in a circle. But there was just such rich dialogue amongst themselves because these are smart people. They've got some interesting challenges, but also some interesting solutions. Let's just dialogue themselves. And then we also had a innovation through technology with a lot of exploration of AI. So our sessions ran the gamut from everything that you would expect, and for those that want to break and focus on leadership, they could, those that wanted to dig into some health and wellness, but we tend to focus on real life solutions from our accredited communities or frameworks from the community of researchers that departments can take, implement, and just start running with.
Yeah. And so with that, then the AI models. Well, let's dig into that because I know that that's a family topic for you. I think you had mentioned your husband is pretty up to date with AI, and
Yes.
right. Let's say that he's kind of an expert in it. I would say since he's worldly with his
That might be an
speaking and
understatement.
yeah,
Yeah,
and his
yeah.
appearance. It's right. So let's talk about the basics of AI. Where should someone and first of all, I think why every firefighter and why I like to call the misfit nation that we have here, why we need to know more about it and kind of start with the basics and then move into some of the cool stuff, maybe.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes in a snap. Visit magnagrip.com to download MagnaGrip's free grant guide with expert tips to solidify a grant for essential safety equipment, such as MagnaGrip's exhaust removal systems. That's magnagrip.com to download the free guide.
Well, I've been doing a couple of presentations, and I have a slide that I always bring up, and it's called AI for newbies. Like not AI for dummies, because like none of us can be dummies in it because it's so very, very, very new.
Yeah.
Come back to me,
You could
ask
go AI for truck guys. That's
there.
me.
I'll let you say that.
Okay.
You
There,
can.
I'll say it. Yeah. All right. Listen up, truckies
So
like
at
me.
its very simplest form, AI is the combination of computer science and robust data sets to enable problem solving. AI only does 2 things. It predicts or it generates.
Okay.
It's got a couple options. It can take a human approach, in which case it brings in all of our wonderfulness, but also some of our challenges, or it can have an ideal approach, which is, there's no politics, there's no budget restrictions, there's no egos. And sometimes when people look at the results that come out of it, if it's an ideal approach, the reason that people tend to maybe push against that is because it does try to see a world that's utopian and where there just isn't a lot of challenges. But
Yeah.
that's obviously not the way it is. So really, like AI is just a tool that predicts or generates. And what it does to do so is computer science and some other information that's already out there that it can use. For the fire service, we can get our hands on some computer science. The challenge is our data sucks.
Hmm.
And that is a clinical term that it does, right? We can look at a lot of it, but the best is I've asked folks before, like, do you think your department has robust enough data sets to be able to use AI? And they're like, kind of. Do you think the fire service does? And they're like, no.
No.
So to that end, some of the work that I've been doing personally, but also a lot of the work that CPSE has been doing is to elevate just the role of analysis, and whether that's data governance, like the boring stuff of garbage in and garbage out. But like if we get that right, we can actually use AI to tell stories. But I'll paint an unfortunate situation for you. Let's think about the ghost ship fire in Oakland, right? If
Yeah.
you had tried to use an AI tool to say, make a go, no go decision, because they unfortunately had not been doing all of their, abandoned structure inspections, they just looked at an abandoned structure, they likely would have made the same no-go decision because they weren't aware that it had become an artist commune, right? Bad data, lack of risk assessment, lack of complete data, AI would have made the same decision as anybody else. The horrible fire in West Texas at the fertilizer plant. The level of data that fire department had was it was a commercial interest. Oh, got to save this commercial interest, got to save these jobs, got to save this property. It was a literal pile of shit that blew up. Like it was going to kill people, and it unfortunately did. So once again, the data that they had was not robust enough to tell them, yes, it's a commercial interest, but it's a hazardous commercial interest.
Yeah.
So I always like to tell those two stories of like, even if you'd used AI in those situations, you likely would have had the same results.
Yeah. So basically, like AI can utilize data in a very quick manner, but if the data is false, it still doesn't lead to a good predictability.
Yeah.
Right.
And for anybody that wants to, I feel like I've got another 20 years of work ahead of me, right? Others may feel that are listening, they maybe have 20, 30. The talk is that AI isn't going to replace, like, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to people that know how to use AI.
I gotcha. Yeah.
And so the skill sets that you need to bring to the table are data analysis, like can you have some solid data? And then also cybersecurity, because you got to make sure that nobody can get in and manipulate the data to give you a false positive or a false negative. And that's really scary when you think about the critical infrastructure that fire departments protect, that they themselves are a part of a critical infrastructure. Like what if a malicious actor fed wrong information about a building, or even worse, in an active shooter situation where the fire department is trying to provide either some emergency management or some medical care?
Yeah.
It can be pretty scary.
So you're always going to have that human element within. I mean, you can't take some of that out, right?
Never.
Like, and you had mentioned it to help with predictability on go, no go. And I think a lot of departments aren't even there yet, but where are we at? Like what are some of the departments that you know of? How are they using it currently?
The biggest one is just research and analysis, like what is out there. And so if you do have a data set and you want it to just tell you a story, like throw it in and say, what trends or what are my busiest times? The ability for the AI to summarize, synthesize, contextualize information that you already have quicker than a person can allows you to start seeing them. Now, what should we do about it? Because in any data that you look at, there's like the diagnosis of what happened, but you want to get to is the prescription of what should we do. That's the goal, right? Like knowing what happened is fine, but but if you could speed up the what happened to then figure out what we should do next time, you're saving time. Another is all things administration, right? Like whether it's a first cut of a policy, whether it's a scheduling assistance, whether it's translating language flyers into different languages. Not related for a fire department, but we just looked at a tool today that you can take a script, throw it in, create an avatar, and have it create a training video.
Oh, an actual video.
Yeah, so like you would upload a photo of yourself. It would make an avatar. You could choose whether you wanted to be like a cartoon avatar or like
Brad Pitt,
you want a
like a
Mimo
Brad Pitt avatar.
type,
Yeah.
or do you want to like look a little bit more like yourself? And then you also could record your voice,
All right.
and you're off to the races on a training video.
Yeah. I've used it for training outlines.
There you go.
Yep. I've created some training outlines. I've tried it for some EMS reports.
So a couple of the things that we're hoping to do in the AI space to move it along is we're going to be collecting the use cases of the departments that are utilizing AI and how they are doing so. Who were the partners they brought to bear? What were maybe some of the policy pieces that they needed to jump over? But what's the benefit that's come out of it? And we've seen, in City of San Antonio dispatch, they're able to use the FaceTime, like a FaceTime type app, to gauge whether somebody's had a stroke because the AI is able to read the face.
Oh, wow. So then they have better, you can send resources a lot quicker that way.
Correct,
then,
right?
Like the correct resources. Yeah.
And I think that you just kind of pulling a string on the correct resources. Like I think a lot of it is it gets you to the correct answer quicker. It doesn't make your answer necessarily any better, but it just gets you there quicker. So as much as I don't like the phrase of you can do more with less, like you might be able to do more with less.
Yeah.
As you get to that answer quicker. One department, with full permission, obviously, of their firefighters, got them the whoops and was able to, there you go, you've got one on, was able to watch their track, obviously, their sleep cycles, but then compared it in AI with their RMS data and their call runs, and were able to predict like how, like what impact calls and stuff had. So as they're looking at changing shift start times, changing shift schedules, doing a lot of great things to improve sleep, which is critical to every single system.
Yeah, now you're talking my language here. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm selfish about my sleep. I feel bad for people who work shift work. Like I don't know that I could. Like I really, 7 to 8 hours every night, or the world suffers for it, not just me. But whether it's health, whether it's wellness, whether it's the ability to deal with these increasingly more complex and unfortunately sometimes devastating calls, like that sleep is so important. So they're able to compare this data set, but it's taking away any bias because the system is just like, here's the data. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we saw. So there, though, it took a lot of trust in that department to utilize the information, to be willing to share it. It was non-punitive, right? Like you can't use this to get to a shortcut answer. You have to use it to get to the right answer. And to that end, one of the things that we want to do in the 11th edition, our new accreditation model, the one that's going to come out in 2027, departments are going to need to have a policy for the ethical use of AI.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Could they use AI to write the ethical policy?
They could try. They could try for sure.
I'm just trying to forward. I'm trying to think forward.
No, they could. And but because it's looking at, a lot of people have said like, oh well, there are these potential risks of AI that are out there. One is around like workforce and labor impacts. They're like, oh, you can't like outsource a firefighter with AI. Understood. Robotics are out there, but they would still need a person to administer. But what about the light duty? What about I've broken my leg, I just need 6 months to hang out, and I'll go back to the field and I'll be awesome. If so much of that administrative workload ends up getting outsourced to AI, where is the release valve for the firefighter that's just injured for 6 months and will come back and will be absolutely awesome at their job?
Yeah. I still think it would be data, right? That's where you can have people with a data accumulation and because I think we have so much data right now, we just don't know what to do with it. Like you would mention, right? And is it the right data? That's the other question. I think we can always find things because a lot of departments have, SCBAs that are out of date, and there's equipment that needs to be updated. So I think you can always find something. At least the clever people would always find something. But you hit another topic about like AI. Some departments in bigger cities are using that predictability to move rigs around based on time, right? Like, have you seen that? Like a lot of departments start to embrace that, and is the AI correct? Is that working out?
Well, in the community of accredited departments, I would say I think they're correct because we've been vetting and validating their data for 20 something years. So they are able to tell that story very well. They know when their cycles are going to be high. Um, they can move rigs around. But one of the stories that I like, and it's not even necessarily an AI conversation, but it is a big data story. It's one department, they know how much they've saved in their region by their interventions. As they look at annexing communities, they are able to showcase, okay, like we're going to buy a plot of land, we're going to build a fire station, we're going to staff it up, we're going to resource it up, we're going to put equipment in it. And you start seeing this like negative balance sheet, but then you take out that this is the predictions of the calls that are going to happen over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And you start seeing how it quickly starts to pay for itself. So you're talking about here, like wanting to annex properties, provide services. They're not cheap, but a case of public policy is not a one-day discussion, right? It's a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year discussion. And in some cases, if a fire department is even trying to buy that piece of property or get that property gifted from the developer during an annexation, like they're going to get in early, because if they wait too long, it's a little bit too expensive. We've seen departments that are predicting 5, 10 years from now where they need to build the station. So they're able to do that.
Look at growth models, call volume models, right? Like adding data point, and then kind of evaluating that way.
And that's where that community risk assessment standards of cover becomes so important, because it's the risk makeup of your community. Do you have low rise, high rise? Do you have young, old? Do you have transient communities? Like, do you have a bunch of students? Do you have folks that come in on, they come to work during the day, but they don't live in your community? Do we have waterways? Do we have floods? Like, that starts to build a very rich picture of what it's going to look like. And then how often do we get called? And what do we do when we're there? How long are we there? When are we able to save versus when are we not able to save? When are we able to save some versus we lose all of it? And it does become pretty exciting. So I think that that's the AI. I've seen, just got to see a presentation by one of my colleagues from the U.S. Fire Administration talking about NARIS when it's fully built out. I'm positive you guys have been talking about that.
Yep.
It's going to be able to bring in the property models that, like all properties that exist in the U.S., as well as weather, and how you could layer that data set to start running some really cool analytics about what it looks like.
Yeah, like call volume and weather patterns, and right, like all kinds of stuff.
But as much as I love data, I'm going to make my plug for more humans. Like, I think that AI is great, and I think AI is great at checking and summarizing and synthesizing, but people still need people. Like, a firefighter is going to give, unfortunately, somebody's home who's perished the hug. The AI is not.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and are we as an industry ready to go back to really focusing on hiring more humans? The data is important. I love it. I live in it. I breathe in it. But I'd like to think that also being somebody that people can interact with is part of why things go well for me. And, whether it's the old adage of like, can you have a beer with that person? Like, this is going to be really important. And the empathy. What are the skill sets that people are going to need? I think that amazing firefighters who become amazing fire officers, who become podcast hosts, who then go on to having great careers, as fire chiefs, they've got a lot. And if you don't, and you are unwilling to work in a team, and you're unwilling to let go of your ego, like, this AI is for naught.
Well, and that it brings all this back full circle. It's a great question to kind of bring back the whole meaning of the show, right? How do you get better every shift? We talked AI. We talked about all of this innovative mindset, innovative talk and thinking, but it sounds like you're really excited about going back to basics and pushing that leadership and human side. like give me like, what are you most excited about with that, and how CPSE is helping with that part as well?
I had the opportunity to moderate a panel at the Excellence Conference of 3 city managers. And I got to ask them questions about, how do, for somebody who wants to become a fire chief, if you want to become a department head. And I think about 50 times they must have talked about relationships. Relationships with the firefighters, relationships with the community, relationships with your fellow department heads. And they all got pretty awesome fire chiefs. Their departments are accredited. I don't think they'd be within the CPSE community serving in leadership if they didn't. But that's part of it. And also there is the willingness to learn. The willingness to learn what the new thing is, not dismissing it, and respecting and observing somebody's expertise, regardless of what it is. Like, I had the opportunity to talk with another one of my colleagues about, 25 years ago, there was perhaps a handful of big fire service organizations that had a mandate for the fire service. 10 years later, it was like the alphabet soup, pick a couple of letters, throw them in, and you had an association. But today it's what's your shtick? Like, are you the data person? Are you the health and safety person? Are you the CRR person? Are you the hazmat, the tech rescue? Whatever your shtick is, the way that people are leaning into that, learning more about it, seeing how it's done in different countries, seeing how it's done in different industries that are adjacent to the fire service, and really honing their craft in an area, because it's impossible to be an expert on everything that's going on in the fire service. But if you have a craft, you have a passion, and hopefully you have folks that are willing to support you building that out, that can be pretty great. And then we just have these people that have studied their area through experience, through idea sharing, or even through formal education. And as an industry, I think we're so much better at the end of it.
Yeah. We are a people industry. We're a service industry. People
Right.
forget that, right? So of course we're talking about getting accredited and using AI, but you need to have the people side of stuff before you even get into any of that, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a great point you made.
Well, and Preet, you just mentioned empathy, and we're talking about relationships. And so it might seem counterintuitive, but we can also use AI to help there as well. I mean, I was just talking to some friends who use AI to come up with the right way to communicate something to a colleague, for example. So it might not be the data set analysis portion of AI, but just kind of helping people make some connections, especially if that's an area where we feel like we need to improve. Like maybe someone struggles with conflict or how to
Passive aggressive emails.
yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that.
I'm getting better.
But have you dabbled in that, or are you seeing other people who kind of use it from that more kind of human connection angle?
This is an interesting question for me, and it's actually the biggest challenge that I personally have with AI. I'd like to think I've got good emotional intelligence, and I'm a solid writer. Like, I can shift my writing style based on what I need to. So now I'm like, gosh darn it, like AI's taken away one of my ability. But
your superpowers.
yes, but in the sense of that individual, they at least realized that they needed to shift something. So
Yeah.
I'm really interested in what were they open to? They were willing to learn. AI was just a tool. They either could have asked a friend to rewrite it, they could have spent hours themselves rewriting, or they asked the AI to rewrite it. But the willingness to rewrite it, that's the emotional intelligence that something needs to change.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah. So but it definitely can. I've seen it. Do you want it to be? We were looking at one particular tool where we could write a message, and it was, I think, 7 different tones or 15 different tones of, are you trying to convince? Are you trying to educate? Are you trying to recognize? Do you want it to be formal? Do you want it to be casual? And there are those that struggle with refining their thoughts to get them out. They have amazing thoughts. They just need a tool that'll take all the wonderfulness in their head and make it 4 bullet points that everybody will attach to. I have seen that on my own team, where the just unique skill sets and insight that our team has, or even that our we've done some surveying and folks have had our ability to synthesize that and say, oh, this is what we should do about it now. This is actually the common theme, and not have some bias in reviewing it, because you want to jump to conclusions so quickly. This really can take away a lot of that. So I
Yeah.
that is a opportunity. But once again, I think that the willingness of the person to not be right and let
Mhm.
somebody else be right, even if it's the AI, that's the trick. The AI is just the tool.
Yeah,
Well,
it is really interesting once you start getting into a conversation, plugging it in, it'll prompt you back. Would you like this to be punchier? Would you like this to be more engaging? And it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about punchier as the word, but yeah, good point. And it's really interesting how those conversations play out.
well, it's about. I love the fact you acknowledge it's about a willingness to learn. It's a willingness to be better. It's also having the understanding that I'm not really good at this, so this is a tool that can maybe help me be less punchy or more to the point, right, or more poignant. And I think like you hit it perfect, and it's a great point to bring home on our final question that we always like to ask our guests. It's about improving. It's about how can you use this tool to be a little bit better. And so for you, who you're exposed to so much innovation, you had so many wonderful people that are credited, and you're surrounded by a lot of successful organizations. For you personally, what are you working on right now to be better?
I am reading this book, Reculturing: Design Your Company Culture to Connect with Strategy and Purpose for Lasting Success. We've gone to a full remote workplace. We are having some planned and consistent, right, transitions and succession planning. And I'm now in a position where when I started 11 years ago, about 11 years ago, there's nobody on my board or my commissions that's in, or even senior staff that's in the position that they were in when I started. So they've been within the organization, but perhaps not their exact position. And I want to make sure I don't become the emperor that has no clothes and nobody's willing to tell me that I have no clothes. It's a fable that we bring up a lot. And I want to create an environment where there's healthy conflict and a lot of candor, but significant heart. Like, not saying this to hurt you. Like, the goal is improvement. And I think that this book hopefully is going to help me a little bit. But that's one of the things that I'm working on right now, because I'm as guilty as any other human being that I could get stuck in my ways and think I have the right answer and have huge blind spots. And I think the more you stay in a position and the higher you climb, the blind spots can tend to be a little bit higher, a little bit bigger. So really making sure that that's not the case.
Awesome. That's recognizing maybe a weakness, also what your environment is, and a willingness to change, and have those crucial conversations. Another great book, Crucial Conversations.
Yeah. It's a
Right?
great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so many good words of wisdom. There's just so much here. First of all, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
And on the accreditation process too, by the way, we do have scholarships available through the Arthur J. Glatfelder Scholarship Fund for CPSE accreditation, by the way. So we'll leave that link. So if anybody is interested, they can actually apply for a scholarship to get accredited, which I probably will try to do as well.
And
And
CPSE actually has scholarships also. We have on our website.
okay.
Yeah, we do.
So right there takes away, well, I don't have any money, can't afford it, blah, boom, done. That's not an option for you. So I hope a lot of people kind of step up with me, and maybe they can help me in this process. But I'm excited to start moving on towards accreditation. So I hope to have you back. Next time we have you back, I'll either be halfway through accreditation or fully accredited, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And we just, again, appreciate your time and all your insights. And if you have questions for Preet or myself or Janelle, you can email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. So much good stuff. So I hope you listen to this podcast, you share it with friends. Preet Bassi, thank you so much for being here and for all your wisdom. And we look forward to many more conversations with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. I enjoyed it immensely.
I just think the best way to summarize it is you can have AI, you can have accreditation, but you really just need to be human. You have to look at where you can get better and have the willingness to get better, because it's the essence of what we try to talk about here, which is learning something, doing something, and sharing something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.